Business Bites with Invest Northern Ireland. Go further and grow stronger with Invest NI. Visit investni.com/export to reach your exporting potential. Invest NI. Go further and grow stronger.
Hi, and welcome to the 100th edition of Business Bites from Bauer Media Audio here in Northern Ireland. Well, we started this feature 2.5 years ago, and I'm proud to say that we've spoken to many fantastic individuals over the 100 episodes of Business Bites. We've learnt about creativity, we've learnt about resilience, and we've learnt about ingenuity in business from many different people in many different walks of life. I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to each and every one of those 100 guests who've joined us and shared their experiences over the last 2.5 years. Well, for the 100th edition, we've done something that's quite rare on Business Bites. We've gone through the archives and we've gone back to episode 4, which was a brilliant interview that we did with Stephen Bogan, who's the managing director of Genesis Advertising. We're not going to replay that because the haircuts and the backgrounds were all different then. But what we are going to do is welcome Stephen back for the 100th edition. Stephen, welcome back to Business Bites.
Thanks, David. Unfortunately, my haircut wasn't different then, but thanks for raising that.
Well, listen, some things will never change, so that's a good thing, in my opinion. But you are very welcome back to Business Bites, and it's great to have you back on. When we look back at that episode, you were telling us right in the middle of the pandemic, it's all about authenticity with brands, and it's all about looking at consumers and where their heads are at and what they're thinking and getting really deep into that. We'll come back to that in a second. But first of all, just for the uninitiated, just give us a brief synopsis of Genesis Advertising for those people who may not know you.
Sure. Well, we're a full-service advertising agency based in Belfast. We've 4 divisions. That includes advertising, digital, design, and brand consultancy. We're 30 years old this year, formed in 1992. We have a mix of public and private sector business. So we work with the likes of Spar across the UK, the Henderson Group in Northern Ireland, who owns Spar and Eurospar brands here, Fibrous, which are a full fibre broadband provider. And we also do a lot of work on the private sector or public sector side of things with the likes of Invest NI, with NI Water, with Public Health Agency and HSE NI.
Good. So to quote the old phrase, you know your beans. The Publicity Association of Northern Ireland are an organisation that hold an awards ceremony here every year. They really are a really good organisation to help promote creativity and anything to do with the advertising industry. Now, you guys were there back in November. You picked up 35 awards, which is a phenomenal result. Congratulations to you.
Cheers.
When you look back on that, what did you learn from that experience? What are your reflections?
Well, look, it was a great night. I think you guys were nominated and picked up awards there as well. But what was so great, I suppose, for us is that the caliber of the judging panel was for me, phenomenal. There were 13 internationally recognized advertising experts drawn from the UK, mostly out of London and mostly out of big internationally aligned agencies. So they really did know their beans. So to get the sort of nod from these guys who were blind evaluating the work on the basis of creative merit was really quite something for the team. So we were delighted for that. But the reality is in advertising, I've been doing this for about 25 years. The awards do matter in larger markets. They matter hugely, actually. And often agencies are chosen on the basis of their creative chops, because clients know that award-winning work works harder in market. So the Institute of Practitioners of Advertising, who are in our industry body across the UK, have done research that shows that creatively awarded work works 4 times harder on average than non-creatively awarded work. So that's why we put such a focus, I suppose, on the awards. That's why we're delighted to win the awards with our client teams, because it's not just the agency that wins the award; it's in collaboration and partnership with the client teams.
Yeah, and I think we can see it across the board here in our part of the world that there is a huge level of creativity from the industry, and it's good to see that you guys were leading that charge at the PANI Awards. So if we look at the creativity that's here, when we look into 2023, how can you implement some of that creativity for brands? What do you think it could be? What are the commonalities, if you like, for great creativity for brands?
Yeah, I mean, there's different facets, and we'll maybe touch on consumer trends in a moment, because in a way, a creative response to consumer trends opens up new opportunities for revenue streams. But in terms of just looking at advertising for a moment, to just build out from the PANI Awards, I think creativity in terms of marketing comes down to really three things. It comes down to having good clients, as I sort of mentioned. That's good supportive clients who sometimes have to go out on a limb a little bit for a creative idea that on paper might feel a little bit risky, but often that's where the biggest rewards actually come from. From an agency perspective, you also need to have a good, well-trained team, an experienced team, and then you also need to have the right sort of processes and tools in place. Like anything else, you can have great people, but if there's not something there to kind of channel that, it doesn't always end in the right output. I also, and I've reflected on this over many, many years in terms of marketing communications. What is it that makes kind of for great advertising kind of campaigns, great marketing campaigns? And I think it comes down to sort of three leaps. And, I stumbled upon this thought maybe 15 years ago. There's probably a better way of framing this, but for me, it comes down to three leaps. It starts with a strategy leap always. And what that's about is looking at the client requirement and really sort of lifting the bonnet of that and looking for kind of compelling and actionable insights into the audience that's capable of influencing their behavior. So that's taking that, distilling it down into kind of a job to be done, an idea of how we're going to get there. And from an agency perspective, what we look to do is to really boil that all down into a single-minded proposition, which gives our creative teams a direction and a spark for them to respond to. That leads to a second leap, which is the creative idea leap. So that's where the creative teams respond to that initial creative brief. And what they're looking to do is come up with an idea that's sort of intriguing, it's intuitive, it's unexpected, but ultimately it's irresistible to audiences. And it often makes them try and think about things in a different or a more appealing way that's capable of encouraging them to buy a product or to change their behavior with respect to some of our public sector clients. We work up ideas, we share them with clients, and eventually an idea comes forward, often the basis of research. And that leads to the third leap, which is required. That's the production leap, which is really turning that idea on paper or on the form of rough scamps or illustrations into the finished, high quality, glossy kind of ad that you're going to see on air, you're going to see on a billboard, etc. So those three leaps for me have to be in place to create that award-winning work. When they are in place, more often than not, you will end up with that award-winning work. And that award-winning work is 4 times, on average, 4 times harder working. So that's why that stuff matters.
Yeah. And it sounds pretty straightforward when you say it like that, but harder to achieve in reality, I'm sure. But that framework is really, really straightforward. And I think it's a really great indicator of when you go off track. Let's just go back to the framework and we can realign ourselves. Well, just briefly, just looking at the time here, when we went back to episode 4, you were talking a lot about getting in tune with the consumer to be really, really relevant. So once you've got the creativity, which is hard to come by and fantastic when you've got it, how do we follow that consumer trend? What is a consumer trend, and what do we think they're going to be in 2023?
Sure. I mean, consumer trends, think about it this way. They describe sort of bundles of values or desires or beliefs or expectations or even concerns that motivate why people buy what they buy, or even motivate what people do. So consumer trends come about as a sort of a complex interaction of what's called pestle forces: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental forces. And if you think about these things, they're like tectonic plates that sort of interact with each other, crash up against each other, and provide and produce new energies, new dynamics. Out of those fall consumer trends. And we use we use the phrase consumer trends, but really what we're talking about is new sources of demand. And that's why they're interesting to companies, because out of those new sources of demand come different manifestations of new products, new ideas, new business models, new services, new channels, etc., to meet emerging needs. So that's what consumer trends are. That's kind of where they come from. And I did a piece in December where I released social post identifying 7 kind of mega consumer trends, which are kind of gaining traction. They've been around for a while. They're not going to go away. There are dozens of trends. The point for anyone listening to this is to try and look at the trends that have applicability to your particular business sector, and those trends that you can action as a business. So I don't think we'll probably have time to lift the bonnet of the trends and explain what they are. But you're looking for trends that have a sense of scale. You're looking for trends that have opportunity to grow into the future, those that are relevant to your business sector, and those that you can do something about as a business.
Well, I think, Stephen, we are running out of time, but what we will do is we'll rediscover that post, 7 Consumer Trends Shaping the World in 2023, which you did publish on your website and social media channels, and we'll republish that underneath the interview so that people can read that in their leisure. But Stephen, we wish you and your team at Genesis a fantastic 2023. And we hope that you go on to win even more awards and deliver more fantastic creativity for your clients. And thank you for being our 100th guest on Business Bites.
Cheers. Thanks very much, David. And next time we speak, I might have hair.
Business Bites with Invest Northern Ireland. Go further and grow stronger with Invest NI. Visit investni.com/export to reach your exporting potential. Invest NI. Go further and grow stronger.